There are moments in life that change everything, quiet moments, almost invisible, yet powerful enough to move eternity. A tax collector sitting alone. A Pharisee staring into the night, torn between truth and tradition. A woman drawing water, unaware that she is about to meet the living God. These are not just scenes from a story. They are turning points in history. Because when Jesus chooses, he doesn't look at status, power, or perfect story of the chosen. Season 1, Episodes 7 and 8 begins in a world on the edge of change. The Roman Empire rules with iron hands, religion divides the people, and hope feels like a distant dream. Yet somewhere in the shadows of Galilee, something greater is stirring, something holy, something alive. Jesus has begun his quiet ministry. Word spreads slowly, carried through whispers and stories, the man who heals, the man who forgives, the man who sees the unseen. For most, he's a mystery. For others, a threat. But for a few, he's the answer they've been waiting for all their lives. In this stillness, we meet three souls, Nicodemus, Matthew, and Simon Peter, each standing at the edge of a choice that will shape the world forever. Nicodemus, a respected teacher, lives surrounded by scrolls, laws, and honor. But his heart is restless. He has seen things he cannot explain, miracles that defy reason. Behind his calm face, a storm brews. He knows there's something divine about this man named Jesus, yet fear chains him to the comfort of his reputation. Then there's Matthew, the tax collector. Hated, isolated, yet sharp-minded and observant. His wealth surrounds him, but it doesn't fill the emptiness inside. He watches people pass by his booth, each glare a reminder that he is alone. But soon, a voice will call his name, a voice that will shatter his loneliness forever. And finally, Simon Peter, impulsive, proud, and stubborn. He's tasted the miracle of overflowing nets and the mercy of a teacher who believed in him when no one else did. Yet faith, for Peter, is still fragile, flickering like a candle in the wind. These three men, so different, yet bound by a single thread, the call of the chosen one. As episode 7 opens, time slows down. The air feels heavier, like the world is holding its breath. Each step, each conversation carries divine purpose. Jesus is not just gathering followers, he's forming a family. Not of perfect people, but of broken hearts, willing to be healed. In these moments, Chosen shows us that the story of faith doesn't begin with power. It begins in weakness. It begins when the proud learn to kneel, when the lonely dare to listen, and when the lost hear their name called by love itself. The quiet before the calling isn't silence, it's preparation. Because before the world can hear the gospel, the hearts of a few must first be changed. Forever, Isatai. He looks at the heart. Every story of faith begins with a moment, a pause in time when everything changes. For Matthew, it was a single word: follow. For Nicodemus, it was a choice left unmade. For Simon Peter, it was the start of something bigger than he could ever imagine. Episode 7 of The Chosen is called Invitations. But it isn't just about being invited to follow Jesus. It's about what each person must leave behind to say yes. Matthew sits behind his table, counting coins that no longer bring comfort. His wealth is his wall high, cold, and lonely. The world has written him off as a traitor, but Jesus looks at him with eyes that see deeper. The moment feels unreal, the crowd silent, the air thick with disbelief. Jesus doesn't preach, argue, or accuse. He simply says, "Follow me." And Matthew does. He rises, leaving everything, his money, his safety, his old name, and steps into a story that will change the world. That single step is one of the most powerful moments in The Chosen. It's not loud or dramatic. It's quiet, almost tender. But inside that silence is thunder. It shows us what real courage looks like. Not the courage to fight, but the courage to walk away from what's killing your soul. Then there's Nicodemus. The teacher who once believed he had all the answers now finds himself facing questions he can't explain. He meets Jesus in secret under the stars. Their conversation feels like poetry and truth woven together. Jesus tells him, "You must be born again." But Nicodemus, trapped between honor and hunger for truth, can't let go of the world that defines him. His heart wants to leap, but his feet stay still. In contrast, it's Peter, fiery, loyal, unpredictable. He's learning that faith isn't about understanding everything. It's about trust. Watching Jesus call Matthew shakes him deeply. In Peter's eyes, Matthew doesn't deserve grace. But that's the point. Jesus isn't choosing the qualified. He's qualifying the chosen. Through these moments, episode 7 becomes more than a story. It's a mirror. It shows us ourselves, the doubts we carry, the pride that blinds us, the love we struggle to accept. It reminds us that God's call doesn't come to the perfect. It comes to those who least expect it. Every invitation in this episode asks a question that echoes through time. What are you willing to leave behind to follow him? Belief is never born in comfort. It's forged in the tension between fear and faith. Episode 7 of The Chosen takes this truth and holds it like a mirror, showing us the beauty and the pain of believing in something we cannot see. Matthew believed. Nicodemus almost did. And between them lies the thin line that separates those who are changed forever from those who only watch miracles from a distance. When Jesus calls Matthew, he doesn't just invite him to walk. He invites him to believe that he's worth following. You can almost feel the silence in that moment. No music, no words. Just the sound of footsteps as Matthew leaves everything behind. Every coin he earned, every wall he built, gone. His faith doesn't start in a synagogue or a temple. It starts in motion, in the courage to take a step into the unknown. Meanwhile, Nicodemus stands in the shadows, listening to the wind whisper through the alleys. He had the chance, the moment was there. Jesus waited. But Nicodemus's fear was louder than his faith. He weeps quietly as Jesus departs, and in that tear lies the story of every soul that almost believed. He had knowledge, wisdom, and power, but belief requires surrender. This contrast becomes the heart of the Chosen's message. One man walks toward grace. The other walks away. One gives up everything. The other keeps what he cannot hold. The invitation to believe isn't just a call, it's a question. What are you still clinging to? And then there's Peter. He watches Matthew join their group with disbelief written all over his face. To him, Matthew is a thief, a traitor, an enemy. But Jesus' choice challenges Peter's idea of holiness. Through Matthew's acceptance, Peter learns that faith isn't about who deserves it. It's about who's willing to receive it. This is where The Chosen becomes more than a retelling. It becomes a revelation. It shows that belief doesn't begin with understanding miracles. It begins with accepting mercy. It begins when the proud are humbled and the broken are lifted. The invitation to believe is quiet. It doesn't come wrapped in thunder or lightning. It comes in a whisper, "Follow me." Those two words can rewrite a life. So many of us are like Nicodemus, standing at the edge of faith, afraid to step. But The Chosen reminds us that Jesus doesn't just call the brave. He calls the hesitant, the doubting, the ordinary. Because true belief isn't about being fearless. It's about choosing faith even when fear is still in the room. Every invitation carries a cost. But what you gain in return is everything the world can't give: peace, its purpose, and a love that never leaves. Sometimes redemption begins with thirst. Not for water, but for meaning. Episode 8 of The Chosen, I Am He, opens on a road bathed in dust and heat. A lone woman walks toward a well, outside Sychar, carrying more than an empty jar. She carries years of rejection, broken promises, and silent shame. The world has decided who she is, but heaven has another story to write. She bends to draw water, hears a voice, gentle, calm, unlike any she's heard before. "Will you give me a drink?" A simple question that begins an eternal conversation. In that instant, the boundaries that divided her life, gender, race, sin, fear, begin to fall. Jesus speaks not to condemn her, but to see her, to name her wounds without turning away, to offer living water that can quench a deeper thirst. The scene feels timeless. Sunlight flickers on the surface of the well. Dust hangs in the still air. And there, between two strangers, Eternity breaks through the ordinary. The woman's eyes shift from disbelief to wonder. She realizes this man knows everything about her, and yet still speaks with kindness. That moment is the heartbeat of the chosen. The idea that grace finds us exactly where we've been hiding. As the conversation unfolds, Jesus reveals what no one else has dared to say aloud, that he is the Messiah. Not in the courts of Jerusalem, not before kings or priests, but to a woman the world had dismissed. In that choice lies a quiet revolution. The gospel begins not from the top, but from the margins. Her jar trembles in her hands. The weight of shame replaced by the rush of hope. She leaves it behind and runs into the village shouting, "Come and see." The same people who once avoided her now hear the truth through her voice. The first missionary of Christ is born not from power, but from pain transformed. Back with the disciples, confusion turns to understanding. They begin to see what this calling truly means. That the kingdom of God will be built through compassion, not control. Through mercy, not might. Each face around Jesus carries a spark of realization. This journey is not just about following him, but becoming like him. The episode closes with movement. The woman's laughter echoing, the disciples walking forward, and Jesus leading them toward the unknown. The well fades behind them. The living water keeps flowing. The chosen reminds us that faith often starts at our lowest point, in places no one else would look. The Samaritan woman's story is not just hers, it's ours. Because every one of us has a well we return to, and every one of us is waiting to hear those same words, "I am he." Every miracle begins in secret, but faith cannot stay hidden forever. The moment Jesus reveals himself to the Samaritan woman, something shifts in the world around him. The private call of belief turns into a public declaration of truth. The quiet whispers of faith start to echo across villages, rivers, and hearts. In this section of The Chosen, Episode 8 transforms from a story of individuals to a movement of souls. The woman at the well, once afraid to meet anyone's eyes, now runs through the streets shouting his name. Her voice trembles not with shame but with fire. Her testimony becomes the bridge between silence and salvation. It's powerful because it's real. She doesn't preach, she doesn't quote scripture, she simply tells her story. He told me everything I ever did. That's it. Her truth becomes her message. And that's what The Chosen captures so beautifully, that sharing what Jesus has done for you is the purest form of preaching there is. Back with the disciples, we see another kind of transformation. What started as following a teacher is turning into carrying a mission. They begin to understand that this calling isn't just about witnessing miracles, it's about becoming one. Each act of faith ripples outward. Matthew's obedience inspires Peter's humility. The woman's courage ignites their compassion. What began in private hearts now moves through public roads. Jesus stands at the center, calm, knowing, purposeful. He doesn't chase crowds. The truth draws them in. The disciples are amazed as people begin to gather. Not because of power or force, but because of hope. That's the miracle. Not water turned into wine, but shame turned into purpose. The well, once a symbol of isolation, becomes a doorway to revival. People come not for water, but for something eternal. The woman's words, simple yet sincere, reach where sermons cannot. They awaken the forgotten, heal the rejected, and remind everyone that the Messiah has come, not to a throne, but to the broken. And that's where the bridge stands, between personal faith and public witness. It's fragile, it's scary, but it's sacred. Because once you've tasted grace, silence is no longer an option. The Chosen shows that the moment you believe, your story becomes someone else's invitation. The Samaritan woman's past didn't disqualify her. It qualified her. Her scars became her sermon. Her shame became her strength. Faith that once hid in secret now shines in the open. And the message is clear. Belief begins with one heart, but its echo can awaken a nation. Change never happens all at once. It starts as a whisper, a single drop in still water. But once that drop falls, the ripples never stop in The Chosen. Episode 8 begins to show those ripples spreading from one heart to another. From a quiet moment at a well, to the beginning of a movement that will reach the ends of the earth. What started as a conversation between two outcasts becomes the heartbeat of faith itself. Transformation. The woman who once hid from her village now walks through it with her head high. Her story doesn't erase her past, it redeems it. People who once crossed the street to avoid her now listen, curious and hungry for what changed her so deeply. She doesn't bring wealth, power, or proof, only truth. And that truth is contagious. Back among the disciples, the transformation continues. Peter, once impulsive and proud, begins to see what humility looks like through Jesus' eyes. Matthew, once isolated, learns to laugh again. Even the tension between them starts to soften, not because their differences disappear, but because love begins to fill the spaces between them. Every step they take together feels heavier with purpose. They are no longer just men following a teacher. They are becoming messengers of something far greater. Jesus doesn't tell them what lies ahead. He doesn't need to. The change inside them is already proof that the world will never be the same. This episode captures something deeply human. The transformation isn't loud or perfect. It's slow. It's awkward. It's painful. But it's real. And that's what The Chosen shows so clearly, that grace doesn't polish us overnight. It reshapes us through every stumble and every surrender in one of the most moving moments. The disciples begin to realize that following Jesus means letting go, not just of possessions, but of pride, prejudice, and control. Their journey mirrors ours, the struggle to trust when we don't understand, to forgive when it hurts, to keep walking even when the road is unclear. The ripples of faith are rarely seen immediately, but each act of obedience, each moment of belief, expands further than we can imagine. The woman's words travel from a small Samaritan town to hearts centuries later to us. Watching and remembering that transformation begins not with perfection, but with permission. Permission to be changed. Permission to be loved. Permission to begin again. That's the ripple The Chosen leaves behind, not just a story of miracles, but a reflection of what happens when ordinary people dare to let God make something extraordinary out of their lives. And as the episode closes, the camera lingers, Jesus walking forward, his followers behind him, dust rising in the light of the setting sun. The ripples are still spreading. The story is only beginning. Every story ends, but truth never does. The final moments of The Chosen, Season 1, Episodes 7 and 8, feel like the breath before dawn. The world hasn't yet understood what's happening, but heaven already knows the ripple has become a wave. The call that began with a whisper now echoes across generations. Jesus walks the dusty road with his disciples trailing behind, their faces marked by both awe and uncertainty. They don't yet realize that they are walking into history, that their names will be spoken for thousands of years, that their faith will build the very foundation of hope. All they know is that they have been chosen. Not because they are strong, not because they are perfect, but because they said yes. The Samaritan woman's voice still carries through the village. "Come and see," she cries, and her words become the first public declaration of the Messiah. What began as a personal encounter becomes a movement of testimony. It is the birth of something eternal, the gospel taking its first breath through human lips. Nicodemus, meanwhile, stands apart. The bag of gold he left behind still glitters in the dust, a symbol of what could have been. His tearful eyes watch from the shadows as Jesus and his followers disappear into the distance. It is a haunting reminder that the invitation of God demands an answer. Belief is never neutral. It is a choice that shapes destiny. And as the episode fades, a quiet truth settles in. This story isn't just about them. It's about us. Every one of us stands at the edge of that same decision, to follow or to remain in the comfort of what we know. The Chosen reminds us that faith is not about being ready. It's about being willing. The eternal echo of these episodes lives in the rhythm of their transformation, Matthew's courage to leave the table, the woman's bravery to share her story, Nicodemus's silent heartbreak, and the disciples' slow awakening to what it truly means to walk beside the Son of God. Each of them reflects a piece of our own faith journey, Moments of doubt, surrender, and rediscovery as the credits roll. The echo continues. The same Jesus who called them still calls us today. The same living water that filled her soul still flows for hours. And the same invitation, follow me, still waits for an answer. So when the screen fades to black, remember this isn't just a story from the past. It's a message still moving through time. Because once you have been chosen, your life becomes the echo, and that echo never fades.